It's July 1st, 2024, and this is the Watson Weekly, your essential e-commerce digest. Today on our show, Target reshuffles its management team. Shopify releases summer editions. And finally, the Investor Minute, which contains 5 items this week from the world of venture capital, acquisitions, and IPOs. But first, in our shopping cart full of news. Actually, one second. This week, we're actually going to do a special episode about Shopify Summer Editions. But first here, we're going to zero in on Target's recent changes. Target shuffles their management deck chairs still too slow. It looks to me like Target is shuffling roles amongst its existing leadership team of Christina Hennington, Rick Gomez, and Lisa Roth. The one exception is CMO. It strikes me that Lisa Roth, the current CMO, is primarily a merchant. The company apparently concluded that Target lacked depth in the marketing function. Of course, Rick Gomez, the one with the marketing background, is now in charge of merchandising. Whereas Christina Hennington is in charge of not only growth now, but strategy. Christina with the merchandising background. Isn't the head of marketing supposed to be responsible for growth? Why does Target need a head of strategy and growth? The answer is straightforward. CEO Brian Cornell has overstayed his welcome, and the organization is scrambling to compensate for it. Streamlining and simplifying the management and organization structure needs to be the order of the day. It's not that Target doesn't have a great consumer culture. It does. It's more the business culture that needs to acquire speed and efficiency. Decision-making needs to be about 5 times faster. That often comes from getting leaders closer to the problems that they're solving. And this new leadership structure moves leaders further away from problems. It's also out of step with a lot of corporate streamlining and cash efficiency concerns that most companies are facing right now. Let's start here. Something must be done to adjust and evolve the Target brand for a new era of cheap, strained consumer, which doesn't appear to be dissipating anytime soon. The Target approach of building more own brands and trying to use that to make your way out of the problem has not worked. Full stop. That's the current playbook. What's the new playbook? It needs to generate consumer demand. Traffic is the issue. Product is one component, but there is the worry that the elevation of Christina Hennington could continue more of the same because we have another merchant as leader. Target needs a marketing leader as CEO, and the entire management team needs about 2 to 3 less people, and likely this applies 4 to 5 levels beneath that. Speed kills, and currently Target is not only dying from strategy, which should come from the CEO, by the way, and if Christina Hennington is truly that person, well, she needs to be the CEO sooner than later. If not, Target needs to announce its CEO succession process has kicked into high gear, and I expect you might start hearing about this as soon as the next earnings call. The age of efficiency waits for no person and no company. Brian Cornell has done an admirable job over his CEO tenure in the last 10 years, leveraging those store assets, primarily with the help of former COO John Mulligan, who built the playbook as Brian was assuming the CEO role. Brian's tenure has been primarily about supply chain innovation. Target's next act truly needs to be about marketing innovation, and that starts from the top. A new CMO alone cannot move the mountain. Our second story. Shopify releases summer editions. You knew this was coming, right? Glenn Coates, VP of Product at Shopify, in his introduction to Shopify Summer Editions, used the word unified as a way to describe what is going on in these editions. I would give it another analogy, raising the water level. If anything, I think unification is underselling what Shopify has done in a lot of this release. Let's dive in. There are 3 parts to what Shopify has done. First, more defaults. Make available new features that merchants and buyers think are just normal, now available in Shopify, sometimes to the detriment of key partners like third parties, Hello, Klaviyo, Loop, and Rebuy. Second is competitive checks, removing a slew of gaps to both BigCommerce and Salesforce. And 3, refactoring and convenience. Make possible and easier a lot of things that, while they may have been technically possible before, they were somewhat broken as to be unusable by a large merchant. The first item in the release is what they call Markets. You see, Shopify had a product called Markets and renamed it to Markets. But seriously, if there is one crown jewel of the release, I would pick it would be the work done to unify inventory. In short, if you have a B2B store, POS, additional market, brand, or storefront, there no longer seems to be any limitation based need to split inventory in Shopify. Here are a few items in this section included in this release. There is a new central command center called Markets where you can see across every country where brands and selling formats that you support all tied to the same inventory. Essentially, this means you can create unique buying experiences without creating multiple stores. This is also true for multiple business entities. Shopify Payments used to require a single corporation per account. This has been released and hallelujah. Markets Pro has been renamed Managed Markets. Globally and Shopify seem to have rebuilt Markets Pro within its Shopify Markets admin and catalog. Still seems like there's more work to be done here for the merchant of record model. Customs and catalogs restrictions are now integrated into the catalog with VAT-inclusive pricing. A little yawn here. VAT-inclusive pricing is not exactly a revolution. Bottom line here, storefronts that are global by default and omnichannel by default are going to be the standard going forward. Shopify does not like to be caught behind the times, and their willingness to make major changes to their functionality is admirable, given how difficult these changes must have been. Put another way, one of the final BigCommerce advantages. The next major item in the release is analytics. Shopify seems to be taking aim at reporting apps, as well as the fact that a lot of people have been thrown off by all the new Google Analytics updates. The true experts I know really love GA4, but that is like less than 1% of people. The average person was quite frustrated by the GA to GA4 transition, and Shopify Analytics could be helpful here. Here are a few items that are included. Standard e-commerce reports out of the box that are customizable and draggable by default. Reports that are customizable by Shopify QL, which is kind of a new term, which is a nice feature for advanced users. This is something you can do in Google reporting. Real-time streamed analytics are now available versus waiting a day. I mean, finally, we are out of the Stone Age. The old reports were actually a very bad look for Shopify on this point. Bottom line, Shopify gets a lot of grief for reporting, but most veterans would recognize that historically all e-commerce platforms have had terrible or even no reports at all out of the box. Let's hope this keeps improving. The next item is point of sale or POS. For years, it felt like there was a battle between the POS team and the Shopify core team. They were on different islands hurling cannonballs at each other. This seems to be the release they actually buried the hatchet and are all singing from the same sheet of music. Here are a few items the POS team included in this release. It's a pretty big list. UI extensions. There is now only one way to customize Shopify admin, checkout, or POS. Promotions. There's a slew of what I considered broken use cases for promotions, which now seems fixed, with discounts and discount functions, which appear to work the same for POS now as normal checkout. Things like buy Y, get X, and stacking discounts. Payment customizations and product bundles are also released. Custom pricing or catalog by store. Seems like this should have already been on the tin already. Better late than never, I suppose. Pick up in store and ship from store. Automatically transfer an item from another store when it's out of stock. And if I didn't know better, this was starting to sound a little like an ERP. Ship from store, powered by Shopify order routing. Good that this is standard now. Sales staff attribution. Okay, really? You couldn't attribute a sale in a store to a staff member? I can't believe this wasn't in there before. Streamlined email collection. It's actually a nice touch that at checkout, if the person's email or phone number is recognized by ShopPay, merchants are able to easily collect email addresses for an opt-in list. This is a truly insidious and thoughtful feature at the same time. So good work to the product manager on this one. The bottom line here, these are much needed changes from the POS and look forward to these products staying in sync more in the future. I know many integrators and SIs struggled with the differences between these product lines, including knowledge and functionality gaps between the internal Shopify teams themselves. Shopify seems to be trying to reduce the effects of Conway's Law here. The POS is still growing up from my point of view. It will take until 2025 before they enter the realm of being worrisome to more of the mid-market and enterprise larger players. Also, Shopify is building a lightweight OMS here. And while connector-oriented solutions like Pipe 17 don't seem to have much to worry about, and Manhattan, of course, has no concern, it does appear that basic omni-channel, buy online, pick up in store, buy online, return in store, et cetera, is now in the box in all plans plus POS. That's what I call water level rising. Wholesale and B2B, sorry guys, this one feels a little more like an afterthought. Some of the new features I noticed, among others, are headless storefront. This closes a gap between Shopify and BigCommerce. It's unclear how many people will want to access this given the nature of headless, but it is a notable inclusion. Bottom line, Shopify carefully looks at items reported from sales reps and agencies and closes gaps relentlessly over time. This fits into that bucket. Also, headless storefronts on core Shopify. Shopify has introduced a visual editor called Utopia for developers to be able to build templates with associated settings that can be used by non-technical users to build pages. And sorry, I kind of just really have to bring in some humor here. There's a product manager who did a video on the headless solution, and his section video sounds kind of like a Metamucil commercial. Let me see if you can spot it. Headless commerce gives you a lot of great flexibility, but it can also slow you down. Add some Utopia to your diet and get your GI system regular again. Yeah, it's that bad. Bottom line, most are still not going to need it. Why are you rebuilding a CMS you could get off the shelf on top of Hydrogen with your own custom code? Seriously, stop doing that shit. You need help. In other news, this is kind of Shopify's answers to Make Swift, which has recently been acquired by BigCommerce. I will admit to not being technical enough to determine the feature gaps between one and the other, but my suspicion is Shopify is still well behind here given Make Swift was its own company prior. But still, Shopify is taking interest. Next on our agenda is artificial intelligence. Of course, it wouldn't be an update from Shopify if we didn't talk about AI. And let me just say, still work to do. I asked Shopify a very simple question. You mean that new sidekick that's supposed to revolutionize my life? I asked them, where is the Shopify announcements page? I couldn't think of an actual simpler question. It gave me a link, and that link, 404. Can you say garbage in, garbage out? I knew you could. But what did they try to do? Well, here are a few items that actually seem to work. AI visual editing is enabled in the platform, and you can make AI-based edits to imagery from the Shopify platform natively, and it's on mobile too. Shopify Magic is also in core product creation flow, auto-creating titles, descriptions, and this also ties in with their new Shopify category stuff. Bottom line is, there's more to do here as evidenced by the above, but I do expect some of these items, for them to be truly useful for enterprises anyway, need to move upstream. What I mean? Shopify has a Salsify or a digital asset management like Binder competitor buried in here, and long-term, if they ever choose to go in this direction, it's possible. The big challenge for larger merchants, Shopify is not going to be the center of their universe. Think about someone like Mattel's workflow, for instance. And if Shopify believes it's truly a leader here and wants to make AI truly useful for enterprises for products and imagery, it needs to build additional AI-powered composable applications outside of core. Sounds like Shopify might be joining the Mock Alliance. These features are not factored properly for large merchants, and in the same way that organization and market setup was previously not factored properly for large merchants either, and now it is. Shopify also released some checkout updates. They continue to expand their checkout solution with new updates. Many of them probably should have been here before, or maybe you could do it before if you use checkout.liquid, but in particular, they added a few items. Checkout blocks are now free in Plus. Boom shakalaka. Hello, free upsells? Sorry, Rebuy, I didn't see you sitting there. And you can now use apps to customize thank you and order status pages also. Split shipping is also now available in checkout. And if items are coming from multiple warehouses, buyers can see different shipping methods in checkout. Shop Promise also gets a brief mention. One question I have, asking for a friend, by the way, if you wanted to build a marketplace, wouldn't you need split shipping? Also, can we have subscription upgrades as an upsell? Pretty please? In terms of marketing, I will say there is an obligatory mention of Shopify Audiences and Shop Campaigns here. Shop Campaigns in particular is developing nicely, but I still think it needs more tooling to apply to larger merchants. I think the pitch is compelling for shop campaigns, even though you can only redeem shop cash in the shop ads itself, and it still seems like it's building. On the marketplace side, Target Plus has joined the Marketplace Connect app, which was the original Codisto acquisition that Shopify made in the last year. While every other single marketplace connectivity solution already had Target Plus, Shopify did not. Of course, they made a major press release about it. But Shopify is doing some other things. They are actually deeply integrating marketplace connectivity into its admin, part of which is powered by Shopify categories. Will BigCommerce regret not fully integrating Feedonomics sooner? From a few developer items, they also upgraded admin extensions, which are more places you can add pages or customize blocks and actions in the Shopify UI if you're a developer. These are always features appreciated by developers that users won't notice, and you can take advantage of them later on. Demandware has had a pretty extensive admin extensibility framework for over 10 years. Shopify has also made GraphQL updates, and they mention now this is, quote, almost on parity with REST APIs. And of course, there's more developer updates than this, but these are the two that seem the most interesting to me. From a Shopify Plus point of view, here are a few nice items that I noticed that would make useful for larger merchants. Even though many of them seem to be catch-up items, they're still appreciated. Role-based access, this is coming soon. Ability to define permissions in groups to sets of users and then define or modify roles in bulk. Organizational access across stores. Although officially coming soon, it does deserve a mention. Previously, most of Shopify's admin and permissioning controls were store and account based. If you have a dozen stores, this is a serious maintenance issue and security risk. Similar to how markets allowed a unified inventory across multiple storefronts, you might say this allows unified permissioning across multiple storefronts. Create stores from other stores. Well, if you aren't going to give us a staging environment, at least make it a little easier for us to clone a store for testing. Better than a kick in the head, right? Markets. Markets is also useful for larger merchants. One of the biggest disadvantages Shopify had in the market was a unified inventory across storefronts. The multiple business entity issue is also appreciated, and Shopify is finally closing that gap. While most larger merchants will still want something like a Looker Studio, Domo, or other reporting, Shopify could remove the reason for a large swath of smaller Plus merchants to try and find or figure out a third-party reporting application. And by the way, checkout box being free doesn't hurt nobody. Bottom line here is most of these items are playing catch-up to larger players by Salesforce Commerce Cloud. That said, they will be appreciated by a lot of merchants. And from a wrap-up point of view, Shopify is calling this unification. I call it quite a bit more than unification. Some of it is omnichannel glow-up, some of it is ticking off competitor gaps, and finally, raising the water level based on merchant and buyer expectations. It's that time, friends, for our Investor Minute. We have 5 items on the menu today. First, Juvo Plus, Cap Hill Brands, Dragonfly, and Moonshot Brands complete 4-way merger. Juvo Plus merged with Cap Hill Brands to form Infinite Commerce, which later acquired Dragonfly and Moonshot Brands, consolidating Victory Park Capital's debt into the assets into one entity. It seems to me that there was a capital call involved here, and the lender now owns 4 new companies. Tell him what he's won, Bob. Second, commerce operations platform Hive raises 28.2 million euros in Series A extension. Commerce operations platform Hive has raised a 28.2 million Series A extension funding round. Honest question, is this not a supply chain business? Third, Eastern Mountain Sports and Bob's Stores files for bankruptcy. Outdoor gear retailers Eastern Mountain Sports and apparel retailer Bob's Stores have filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Mall retailers are under threat, and sadly, this news will be repeated multiple times this year. Fourth, B2B cross-border home decor brand Trampoline raises $5 million in seed funding. B2B cross-border home decor brand Trampoline has raised $5 million seed funding round. The new funding will grow the team and invest in technology. I'm truly confused by this one. It's kind of a brand studio. What year is this? And finally, AI-powered search engine Daydream raises $50 million in seed funding. Generative AI search and discovering platform Daydream raised a $50 million seed funding round. This is the first big bet on the impact of generative AI search on commerce. Sadly, a $50 million seed round almost guarantees failure in a startup. Sounds like a nightmare more than a daydream. Do you take the over or under? And today's final word of the week of July 1st is chickens. As in, the chickens are coming home to roost. As reported in the Infinite Commerce deal today, where 4 companies were combined into one, the lenders of the world who shelled out lots of vendor debt in the last 3 years are all doing capital calls. Lenders are starting to get the idea that if they're going to own the liability, they may as well own the company. After all, if they are the lender of last resort, what's the difference anyway? Even a worthless asset is now their asset. Shopify, Flexport, just saying. Let this be a warning to players out there with too much debt. Did you know that RMW Commerce has a brand new podcast? Check out the Watson Weekend for an unfiltered and lively e-commerce chat each week with me, Rick Watson, my co-host Jess Liseski, and an array of interesting guests and topics, all focused on e-commerce. You can find the Watson Weekend by searching for it on YouTube, iTunes, or Spotify. That's all for this week. Till next time, Watsonians. Hi, I'm Rick Watson, CEO and founder of RMW Commerce Consulting and host of the Watson Weekly Podcast, your essential e-commerce digest. Our production partner for this series is Citizen Race Car. The show is produced by Jose Baez, production manager Gabriela Montequin. To hear new episodes of the show every Monday morning, subscribe now at rmwcommerce.com/WatsonWeekly and wherever you get your podcasts.